Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
San Diego rang in the new year with significant rain, and it looks like an even stronger storm is in store. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Also today, the first snow survey of 2023 showed promising results. KPBS reporter Melissa May has more on the impact on our drought.
This is Mission Valley, and more atmospheric river storms are on the way.
It's going to come in pieces. The first significant storm will be this Thursday, where we'll see a lot of high wind and heavy rain.
According to Tardy, San Diego can expect another 2 to 3 inches of rain over the next 10 days and some significant activity at the beaches.
We could be talking about surf 10 feet, even higher than what we just saw New Year's Eve.
Tardy also mentions these weather events can also lead to increased erosion along beaches and cliffs. And even with this rain and flooding, drought is still an issue.
We must continue to remain vigilant and continue to conserve water. No single storm event will end the drought. We'll need consecutive storms, month after month after month of above average rain, snow, and runoff to help really refill our reservoirs.
Today, the California Department of Water Resources conducted their first snow survey of the season.
Our snowpack is actually off to one of its best start in the past 40 years. However, that doesn't mean we're out of the woods quite yet.
Water supply is partially measured by the amount of snowpack. Carla Nemeth is the director of the California Department of Water Resources and asks the public to be alert.
This appears to be a significant event, not only in terms of rainfall, but in terms of wind, which can create down trees and down power lines. So be attentive over the next several days.
Melissa May, KPBS News.
And things are starting to get back to normal for Southwest passengers, but trouble for the airline continues as KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen explains a class action lawsuit was filed here in San Diego.
At San Diego International, planes are taking off and landing. It's back to business as normal. Well, as normal as holiday travel could get. It was a different story a week ago when thousands of passengers were stranded after Southwest Airlines' scheduling system crashed. That prompted 2 San Diegans to file a class action lawsuit on behalf of all affected passengers. Alex Dichter is the attorney for the plaintiffs. He says his clients, Carla Hill and Cameron Josephs, are looking for systemic change.
And my clients are very adamant of having a bolstered passenger bill of rights. So when an airline does have staffing issues, does fail to book travel in a prudent business-like manner, they do take care of the passengers and consumers in a proper way.
According to the suit, Hill spent nearly $1,000 to fly her son from Ohio to San Diego, but his flight was among the thousands that were canceled. And Joseph was stuck in Nashville for several days because of, quote, Southwest malfeasance. Consumer travel advocate and former airline executive Kurt Ebenhock says this was not a weather issue, but a failure of the airline for not upgrading its systems.
There were warning signs of this developing over the past couple of years. The warning signs were well known. Their own pilots were warning the company. The flight attendants were warning the company.
At San Diego Airport, local resident Linda Reike says she hopes the airline recovers from this debacle.
I love Southwest, so it's very, sad what's happening. I just wish them the best. I hope they work this out with minimal, repercussions, but we'll see.
Others says it should serve as a warning for the industry.
I hope it's a wake-up call to both the transportation industry and other industries of the ways that climate change can impact the economy going into the future and being able to be prepared for different kinds of disasters.
Meanwhile, Southwest is trying to make it up to affected flyers by offering reimbursement for expenses, refunds, and 25,000 frequent flyer miles to some customers. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A jury today awarded a former San Diego County Deputy Public Defender $2.6 million in his wrongful termination lawsuit against the county. The jury found San Diego County was responsible for Zach Davina's past and future wage losses of $640,000. They also awarded him $2 million for emotional distress. The jury concluded Davina, who is gay, was fired because of his gender expression, as well as for complaining about what he believed were racist comments made by a supervisor toward a black colleague. Day one for the new Congress in Washington, D.C. is going far from smoothly. With new members sworn in, the first order of business hit a stumbling block. Chris Wynn tells us more about the challenges for Republicans who now control one of the chambers.
On Capitol Hill Tuesday, it's out with the old.
The chair declares the second session of the 117th Congress adjourned.
And in with the historic.
The House will come to order.
The 118th Congress is the most diverse to date, with record-setting numbers of women, Latino members, and members who identify as LGBTQ.
I think it's more about sort of the overriding principles of building a Congress that looks more like America.
A record-breaking 149 women now serve in the House or Senate, including 42 Republicans, the most ever for the GOP. Lawmakers, however, are assuming their seats in a divided Washington. While Democrats maintain control of the Senate,
the Senate will come to order.
Republicans now control the House. The differences between and amongst the two parties already playing out on day one.
McCarthy.
California Representative Kevin McCarthy, favored to become Speaker of the House, facing a once-in-a-century challenge from GOP hardliners.
You may have a battle on the floor, but the battle is for the conference and the country.
The stakes are high. Congress can't function without a speaker, as the leader is responsible for determining the order of business and legislative agenda in the House. Division on the Hill will also likely be a major obstacle for President Joe Biden, as he faces an uphill battle to push his priorities through Congress. But the White House is optimistic bipartisanship will win out.
We are looking forward to working with congressional colleagues to continue to move the country forward for the American people.
Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
And as you just heard, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy's bid to become Speaker got off to a rocky start today. He failed to get enough votes from fellow GOP members on the first, second, and third ballots. UC San Diego political scientist Thad Kauser says the problem for hard-right House Republicans is there is no viable GOP alternative to McCarthy for House Speaker.
I don't think there's a clear second choice in the Republican Party right now who wants to put themselves out there, because to do that, you need to be confident that you have both the support of the moderates who want to govern, who want to build the party brand, who want to expand that majority the next year, and a hard right caucus that wants to freeze investigations, that wants to stop federal spending.
And McCarthy made concessions to win more GOP support, including gutting the Office of Congressional Ethics. And we heard a bit earlier how the new Congress is making gains when it comes to representation. Coming up a bit later, we'll have more from Washington and hear from some of those who make the largest class of first-term women to serve in the House. 2022 was an eventful year for immigration policy. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis spoke with experts frustrated with President Joe Biden's inability to roll back some of Trump-era immigration policies.
The Trump administration spent 4 years enacting hardline immigration policies.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
They included building another border wall, restricting the U.S. asylum system, and threatening to end deferred action for childhood arrivals, which is known as DACA. 2 years into the Biden administration, immigration advocates say that the rhetoric has changed from the Trump years, but the reality of what's actually going on in the border, well, that's largely stayed the same. Blaine Bookey is a legal director at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. She says Trump policies like Title 42 have radically changed the political discourse around asylum. Title 42 is a public health order that allows border officials to turn back asylum seekers without a court hearing.
They have completely flipped our understanding of asylum. They have made it seem like access to asylum at our border is an aberration, when actually it's these policies, these new policies only from the last few years, that are the aberration. For 40 years before that, people were able to come to the border and seek asylum.
While activists continue to decry Biden's approach to Title 42 and other immigration policies, conservatives slam him for being too soft on border security. Advocates say that it isn't just asylum policies that have carried over from the Trump years. DACA is still under threat, and the border wall continues to be expanded. Aaron Reichlin-Melnick is the policy director for the American Immigration Council. He is among many who are frustrated with the fact that DACA is still frozen in place. The Obama-era program provides protections to undocumented immigrants who came here as minors.
No new DACA applications have been processed since 2018, when the Trump administration sought to end the program. That means it's been over 4 years since anyone has been able to apply for the program.
Despite the Democrat control of the White House and Congress, nothing has changed when it comes to DACA.
As of today, Dreamers and other undocumented youth have just as much insecurity in their lives as they did at the beginning of the year.
Pedro Rios is the director of the U.S.-Mexico border program at the American Friends Service Committee. He says that advocates here remain frustrated over what they consider broken campaign promises. A particular sore spot for Rios is that the Border Patrol continues to block access to Friendship Park, which is located along the border just south of Imperial Beach. This is one of the only places along the Mexico border where people from either side can spend time together.
In terms of what's taking place on the ground, we still don't have access to the area that is known as the enforcement zone. This is the area between the primary and the secondary border barriers. And again, the rationale for not having access doesn't necessarily make sense.
On the Mexican side of the border, people who work with migrants also say that not much has changed in the last year. They point out racial inequities in border enforcement. Title 42 gives border officials the discretion to grant exemptions on a case-by-case basis. But Ukrainian refugees and other white European migrants have had easier access to those exemptions than black and brown migrants from Latin America. So says Erika Pineiro, the executive director of Al Otro Lado, the LA-based legal rights organization that's helped hundreds of migrants in Mexico.
I think by and large, it's black and indigenous migrants who are left out, people who aren't tech savvy, people who aren't literate, people who just aren't connected to services anyway. So I don't think that it's going to be it's not a fair process now, and I don't see the administration making plans to make it a fair process even after the end of Title 42.
However, while advocates are not optimistic that 2023 will be much different than 2022, they see some rays of hope. They point to a recent poll showing that the majority of Democrats and Republicans support offering asylum to people fleeing their homes. Again, here's Bookie from the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies.
Americans see through that. I think the example of the Ukrainians, which we mentioned earlier, just helped to highlight for Americans that what is the purpose of the U.S. asylum system, and why do people need to come to our border sometimes in order to access that protection.
She says public opinion polling around DACA shows a similar dynamic. She believes it's possible that the policy might catch up to public opinion. Regardless, we're likely in for another eventful year at the border. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
San Diego hospitals are preparing for a potential surge in COVID and flu admissions following holiday gatherings. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says local doctors aren't expecting this year to be as bad as previous years.
If you look at it in trend-wise, I think that's good. And we're very hopeful, but we're very guarded still because we're not quite over in terms of the Christmas or the New Year.
Kaiser San Diego's Assistant Chief of Staff, Dr. William Sang, is hopeful that this winter won't be like previous ones. The number of reported COVID cases isn't comparable to this time last year, and many San Diegans have protection from vaccines and prior infections.
I want to be guarded about it, but I want to see what happens within the next month, and if everything's okay, I think we've dodged the big one.
Sang says despite lower COVID cases, hospitals are still generally busy. A lot of people are taking COVID tests at home, which don't make it into official case counts. County testing sites like this one at the University of San Diego are offering lab-verified PCR tests. They're still open, and many locations don't require appointments.
I'm testing today because my work needs some sort of PCR test.
Jose Jimenez braved the rain in Linda Vista after testing positive following a holiday exposure. Jimenez says he needs the verified test in order to receive COVID sick pay from his job, and so far he's had mild symptoms.
I've had just a constant light cough. Mucus has been an issue. For my brother, on the other hand, he did experience some fevers.
Everybody's just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. So hopefully it's not going to be as bad.
Dr. Kaveh Bonampour from Sharp Community Medical Group has recently been getting more calls from patients looking for the COVID treatment Paxlovid. He says Sharp is expecting to see more patients coming in following the holidays, but he also isn't forecasting a large surge and says the system is prepared.
But, you never know. It might be some surge coming from some other part of the country or some other part of the world.
Updated COVID and flu numbers will be released by the county later this week. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The world watched on live television last night as the NFL dealt with its most serious moment yet this season when it comes to player safety. So how does a 24-year-old athlete suffer cardiac arrest in the middle of the game? KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne got some answers from a local cardiologist.
Monday Night Football unfolded into a scary scene after Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field and had to be given CPR. Hamlin is believed to have suffered cardiac arrest following a hit from a play that seemed pretty routine. Dr. Jeff Cavendish explains what he thinks happened.
It's called commotio cordis.
He is a cardiologist with Kaiser San Diego.
So pretty uncommon where we get hit in the chest with something, and usually it's in baseball or lacrosse or hockey. A small projectile hits us in the chest, and it hits the chest, hits the heart during the heart's beating cycle in such a fashion that it causes this electrical craziness in the heart, and the heart just goes into what we call ventricular fibrillation.
The Buffalo Bills confirmed Hamlin's heart stopped and was restarted on the field before he was transported to a hospital. Dr. Cavendish says Hamlin's recovery will depend on how quickly that resuscitation happened.
The better the CPR, the more likely the patient's going to survive, but the sooner we get the heart restored to beating on its own and the blood circulating and the brain getting blood flow, the better, the less likely there's going to be any permanent damage.
Marlon Gardenera is the head football coach at Scripps Ranch High School and says this incident is making many families nervous right now.
As you try to encourage other people to play the same sport, you have to know with 100% confidence that this appeared to be a freak accident, something that could have happened in everyday life, in a car, just in any other way.
Gardenera says all sports come with a risk, but also with many benefits that outweigh that danger.
There are inherent risks no matter what we do, and I'm willing to take that risk with my sons because I know they're learning hard work, discipline, accountability, team, competition. They have brotherhood and friendships and relationships that are going to last them that lifetime. And I don't know that I would ever trade for my sons all of those things out of fear of the what if or what might happen. I still think even for my own family, the benefits outweigh the risk.
Despite major playoff implications, the NFL postponed the Bills versus Bengals game indefinitely. In a tweet, the Bills asked people to pray for Hamlin and said, "It's more than football." Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
The recent rain we experienced in San Diego County reached an unforeseen headache for one local family. The Park family lives in a home in Scripps Ranch, and they say that they woke up to about an inch of water in the living room and completely flooded backyard.
I was getting ready to cook my family breakfast, and I noticed water in my living room. Saw a huge lake coming from the right corner of my yard coming through, and it was a disaster.
So the Park family says that the water poured down a culvert onto their property, which sits on what used to be Stone Ridge Country Club in Poway. They say the home builder Lennar failed to prevent homes from being flooded. Their insurance company says the flood was man-made and that the issue needs to be addressed with Lennar, and repairs could cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Lingering showers will continue off and on in the short term, though as we go down the road, we'll start to see our next stronger storm impacting the state. And we'll look for more of a steady rain to make its way through our area as we go into Thursday, as well as the rain, high surf conditions Thursday and also into Friday along the shoreline. Satellite and radar the last several hours showing some of the lighter rain making its way through the area. And we'll catch a bit of a break, and then there's additional energy that's going to be sliding in from north to south throughout the state as we go from tomorrow into Thursday. So keep those umbrellas handy throughout the overnight. Oceanside down to 55, San Diego 55, 56 in Chula Vista, and Mount Laguna just a bit too warm for snow. The temperatures falling off into the mid-30s. As we go to Wednesday, here comes our storm. It's beginning to arrive, but the rain primarily staying off to the north at this point around Los Angeles, out toward Point Conception and north into the Bay Area. Can see a couple of showers around, but it's not looking overly active as we go through the day. Perhaps even a few breaks of sun as we work our way into the interior around Borrego Springs. Otherwise, temperatures on the mild side for now. San Diego, Chula Vista, Ramona, Oceanside, mid to upper 60s expected. Thursday is when we'll see our rain move through. Heaviest amounts will be north from Oceanside to Los Angeles, but we're looking at that potential here again for a half an inch of rain. For some locations, could even be heavier locally, especially as you go north toward Oceanside. There goes the wet weather sliding its way through as we work our way into Thursday. And there are those higher rain amounts as you lift your way off to the north, especially toward coastal northern California and into the lower Sierra. Some spots can see 4 to 8 inches of rain. We'll look for some gusty wind speeds if you're traveling north here too, or east in the mountainous terrain, especially as we go from Thursday into Thursday night. Let's break it all down. Heavy morning rain to the coast Thursday, and then cool. Look at those low 60s, though. It will be turning out sunny over the interior. Cool with rain on Thursday. Sunshine returns. We'll start to see some warming take shape and form as we head through the upcoming weekend. Mountainous terrain, afternoon rain coming in, a little breezy, and then we'll start to see some warming over the weekend. And as we take a look at the desert, some morning or afternoon rain on Thursday. Otherwise, drying out and warming up into the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Earlier, we heard some of the drama today in Washington as the new Congress works to elect a House Speaker. But beyond the leadership fight, we're seeing some barriers broken when it comes to representation. As Jessica Dean reports, it's an achievement that transcends either party.
For freshman members of Congress, January 3rd feels a little like the first day of school.
I'm definitely nervous. It's a big weight. I do not take lightly. I don't take lightly, right, that I'm going to Congress.
I think, wow, it's happening. This is real, and we're about to enter a new phase in life.
This freshman group of lawmakers will be historically diverse, with record-setting numbers of women, Latino members, and members who identify as LGBTQ. According to the Washington Post, this will be the youngest group of incoming House members in the last 7 freshman classes, with an average age of 46.
Do you think you'll come back every weekend? I think that I'm going to come back as often as is practical.
Yeah. At 35 years old, Democrat Summer Lee is the first black woman to ever represent Pennsylvania.
I'm honored to serve as people who come from a working class background, from a black community, from public school systems, with my accent. I want that to come through. I want to be able to be me so that people who are now thinking about whether they should ever run know that they don't have to change who they are to be in this place.
A record-breaking 149 women will serve in the House or Senate, and that includes 42 Republicans, another first. Monica De La Cruz is the first Republican and first woman to represent the 15th District of Texas.
It's really a humbling thought for me, and I just feel like I represent the American dream.
Since the moment they won, both women say it's been a flurry of logistics, hiring, and planning as they prepare for their new lives. There's the question of where they'll live. Lee found a roommate and fellow incoming Illinois Congresswoman Delia Ramirez.
We kind of both just were like, can you afford to live alone? Right? So it was like an immediate connection on that one.
Dela Cruz, a single mom to 2 teenagers, has yet to find a place in Washington, D.C.
Well, probably be sleeping in my office the first couple of months until I get better oriented with the city.
The list of to-dos continues to be long, from hiring staff,
trying to find the right people that had the same vision that I had, that hopefully were from the district, that might be bilingual on top of that,
to learning how to get in the building.
The reality is that we actually have to learn. There's so much that we have to learn.
They're also both women in public office, and they know what they wear and how they present themselves will be scrutinized.
It is a different level of consideration, not even just between men and women, but for Black women, right? As Black women, we have different considerations for our hair. What is acceptable for our hair? How are we presenting ourselves?
All of the considerations, the excitement, and even freshman nerves, part of the experience as they begin their new jobs.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, on the first day of the new Congress, Republicans fight over who will be the next Speaker of the House. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The mastermind of the college administration scandal we've followed in recent years is about to be sentenced. NPR's Morning Edition will have the story as part of its coverage. And then on KPBS Midday Edition checks in with Dr. Eric Topol from Scripps Health about the outlook for COVID after all of those holiday gatherings. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.